Hello, everyone. My name is John Edwards. With me, as always, is Zeke Baker, and together we make the Dad's Drinking Bourbon. Wherever you are, whatever time it is, thank you for making us a part of your day. Zeke, say hello to the folks. It's been a couple weeks.
It has. Hello. Sorry for any breaks in service, so to speak, but we're trying to get back on track here.
I had to work.
It happens to the best of us.
I will take the brunt of this one. I had to focus on the day job a little bit, and sometimes our bourbon night hobby gets put on the back burner. But we appreciate you guys understanding, and tonight we have a very special guest, a member of the Dilawri family, founder of Filibuster Distillery out of Washington, D.C., is coming into the Dad's Drinking Bourbon studio to spend some time with us and share some whiskey. So thank you very, very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I mean, it was a pleasure, and I have always followed you guys, but this is an opportunity for me to come and tell you and share my stories.
I feel so bad because I've already messed up the open twice. So you're seeing behind the curtain. Whatever you follow us, and you must think we're so polished, and we're just ruining it for you tonight.
I think so. Polish never shines. It's what the real raw things which shines, right?
I wouldn't go that so far about being polished either.
Can you guys tell he's a salesman? Can you tell he was out selling whiskey today?
I have to, right? I have to pay my bills. So the distillery lights are only on because I am selling now.
If you could stick around and help us with PR all the time, we would appreciate it. So,
well, with the 2 kids and a wife and a kid, you know how hard it is.
Yeah, exactly. A fellow dad drinking bourbon over here.
Two.
Yeah.
7 and 4 years.
So you are through what we always like to bring up the kids.
So I'm an older dad here.
Yeah.
I'm an advisable dad. I can give you all the advice in the world.
Any advice for the terrible twos?
Enjoy it. This will go away, and you will forget about what happened last day. Enjoy it every day, every minute. These are the moments you just need to enjoy it.
So I will tell you that we both started when we started this whole thing with our kids being younger. We started recording. We would get over here about 8:30. Then that moved to 9. Then that moved to 9:30. Now we're pretty much at 10 o'clock. Because I know I fought with my daughter for an hour to get into bed tonight, and didn't get to leave till like 9. We tried to get her in bed at 8, and I think I left the house at 9:15 to come set up, and Zeke got here about 9:30. So
I was on normal time.
But it moved.
Maybe I was late actually.
No,
I was like 10. I came in at 10:30.
Yeah, but we told you that. We told you.
Was it? Okay, I just thought that because that was the time I could come.
No. We're late by all means, but I wouldn't call it the terrible twos, John. They're fun.
Yeah,
at least my twos have been fun.
Oh,
I'm 3/4 through.
I have a very independent young woman who likes to tell her opinion. And I mean everything. When you go up the stairs, she goes, "No, Daddy, shut the gate." And she'll make you could be halfway up the stairs, and she'll point down to the bottom of the stairs, and you have to go shut that gate, or she's gonna let you know about it.
You know, I remember those when she was 2, but now she's 7, and I have a different battle I have to fight every morning with her. What to wear, not to wear, her hairstyle changes every day. So I used to do her hair. Now I can't do it because I'm not allowed, as I'm not as stylish. So moms have to do it, or grandma has to do it.
Well, my 2-year-old has already gone into, no, Daddy, Mommy do it for everything. So I used to be able to read her stories, do things like that, and she'll just push me out and say, no, Daddy, Mommy do it.
John, you need to do a better job before somebody else pulls you out.
She's already leveraged you hard. I laugh. I see the leverage in it because I've been there. I laugh.
I only get
buddy, you're not upset. You're just trying to leverage one of us right now, and we're not going to fall for it. And you smile real big.
I don't know. I'm a sucker for my daughter. That's the thing.
It's the best memories we can have. I think so. If if anybody says, what's the best decision you have done? I said, start a business and have a family.
Well, that's a great segue, and I agree with you, but let's talk about your business, because you founded in Washington, D.C. You guys started off as a liquor store, right?
Yeah. So, I come from a computer background. I'm a computer graduate. I never got a job into computers. So my only option was to work hard and do something. So we are an immigrant family from India, just moved into the country about 13 years ago, and started working in a liquor store. So started working in a liquor store, worked there for about an year, or 2 years actually. Yeah, worked in about 2 years, and was hoping to get into my real world one day, which was computers, but it just never turned into that. And this opportunity came over at Modern Liquors, which is on the 9th Street in Washington, D.C. So we bought, as a family help, my dad, and we bought that liquor store. Once we bought that liquor store, we tried to turn that liquor store, worked in that liquor store for about 7-8 years. Once we worked there for about 7-8 years, my brother joined me after 6 months or 8 months or something like that. So he joined me. So it was, now we already have a business going. Why don't one of us start exploring some other opportunities? So I took a step ahead and started doing Filibuster Distillery. Because whiskey was our passion, our store. If you ever Google, we have great reviews. We have some very old whiskeys which you hard to find, because we always had a passion for it. As my first drink in my life was, guess what? Was whiskey.
It's got to be a Scotch, though.
Black Label.
Yeah, I was going to say, I've spent a lot of time over in India. It probably was a Scotch. The only thing I can ever find over there, bourbon-wise, is like Jack Daniel's or Maker's Mark.
Yeah, I think the last time I went in there, I just found Jim Beam. Maker's Mark was a very rare, like Puff Blanton's over here.
Yeah,
like Maker's Mark would be one off at some places, but Jim Beam was everywhere. So
was it the double? The DoubleTree is going to have the Maker's.
Yeah, like a lot of places would have a lot of other. There are other brands as well, but if you talk about India as a market, it's a completely different market, and I don't know too much demographic of that at this point of time, so I don't know, but.
I do know I like Kingfisher.
Oh, it's that's my staple to go in there. I would like to just drink Kingfisher, nothing else.
Yeah, we'll leave it at that. We'll get back to yours.
Yeah,
but Kingfisher is a hell of a beer.
It's a great beer.
Yeah,
Kingfisher, it's a great beer. I grew up drinking Kingfisher and Black Label. So. Coming back to, once this whole thing was set up, the liquor store was doing well. So me, my brother, my dad, we all decided that, why have a disguised employment here? One of us can start something else. Let's explore the opportunity of something. So whiskey came naturally to us, because me, my brother, my dad, we all had a whiskey passion. And we all like to drink whiskey, and always had a whiskey palate. So, when our business started, we used to buy everything. We used to source, as we call it, a sourced juice. Yeah. In so-called media world.
We don't knock anything sourced. We've had plenty that we've said were some of our favorite pours. As long as it's good, we don't care where it came from.
So Filibuster, when we started off, we used to get all our made in Kentucky, because we were not sure, are we ever going to make a second batch or not. And we didn't raise any capital. We just used all our savings into buying, I don't know, was it first 10 barrels batch we bought it? So we kind of used every saving we had from MGP. That's how we started off. So that was our first foray into the whiskey world. That went very well. Then we bought our distillery in 2013. So that was just a warehouse. We were still sourcing our whiskey in early 2013. But then slowly the whole project took a shape, and it started working in towards a distillery, because we were born in DC. We wanted to be in DC and do it because DC is I call it a hometown, because I love that place. That's how we started off. DC has been always very kind to us.
We're not very political on this show, but DC isn't kind to a lot of people.
But DC is very kind to people who are kind to them.
Well, but I would just think in DC, that's the type of town that needs a good drink. And if you think
there are a lot of I don't know. I think so. On per capita, DC is up there in drinking.
Yeah, I would assume so.
Yeah,
right?
I don't know exactly what's the per capita. We all have a computers here. We can Google it real quick.
But if you think about it, I mean, if you think about what comes out of DC, I mean, now you have Magnus coming out of DC. You have Jack Rose, which is one of the preeminent drinking destinations in America. There's you guys are out of DC. There's a lot of good stuff coming out of DC. And if you think about those areas that are popping outside of, Kentucky, Tennessee, you really think New York has a strong presence now. DC is starting to have a strong presence now. So it's really interesting, right?
Yeah, that's what it should be, So that's what the Filibuster, when we started off, we wanted to have the sense of belonging that where we are from. But unfortunately, we have to move out from DC, because our whole idea is that where you belong to, your water is the main source of making a whiskey. So if your water, you can have a treated water, or you can have a water from your source. So where we are in our Shenandoah County, we have 2 wells in our property. One is a 700 feet well and one is a 400 feet well. So that's the reason we moved from DC to Virginia, because of the high limestone water and using that.
It's better than going to Detroit.
Cheers. No comments.
So is it a space issue as well, though? Being able to, I mean, I have to assume that the real estate is not cheap to warehouse and age barrels in DC.
We never got that far. I think so. When we laid out the project, we consulted with a couple of people about the water source and without everything. So it just came out to be the most important factor of making a great whiskey. If you look at the whiskey world, look at Highland, Lowland, Scotch world, Island, Lowland, Islay. That's all. It's all the water source, what you source from there. It's the peat from Islay which comes in. That's the sea which is right there. You go. The reason why Highland is because they are further from sea. The Islas, Kentucky is Kentucky because of the water source, because they are on a very big limestone water. So same thing we wanted to have, where like New York bagels are New York bagels. You cannot copy that. So that people try it.
Yeah.
So that's why we, like if I would have been in DC, there is nothing wrong. I can just put a little RO, strip everything off, put your yeasting, and you're done. But we didn't want to do that. We wanted to be where we really belong, have that water quality. When you can get that. If we didn't have it, we didn't find it, then I would have made a new story.
So what was your first, I mean, you guys contracted some of this the juice in the beginning, and then you started laying your own stuff in 2015, correct?
2015. Yes, you're correct.
And I believe what you're putting out now is one of the things we were talking about before. Previously, you had 20% of your own distillate in there. Later on this year, the next batch, you're going to have 50%. But coming the beginning of next year, it's going to be all your own stuff.
Yes.
Right? So I have to assume that by trade, you weren't a distiller. So did you have to get some help in this process, or was it something that you just researched a whole heck of a lot? How did you and your family start doing that?
So one of the major factors, I think, so retail industry, all the people who are listening to you or who if they are retailers, they would agree with me, or the restaurant buyers will agree with me, that the amount of practical knowledge we guys have or we grasp from, because in a retail store, I have about 10 people coming and visiting me and telling their stories, telling about how they do the stuff. So you learn practically too much. Going to school is very important and everything, but it's a passion, what you really have to do it. So, for example, I learned about the distilling and mashing from a couple of people who came and told me about how their whiskey is different than the other. And somebody would come in and talk about how their cognac is different from others. Somebody would come and talk about that, how do they filter it? Why did they use carbon filtration instead of chill filtration? So this is all I gathered practically. So I'll tell you a very interesting story. When we set up our plant, August was a date where we had to start distilling it. We hired ex-Coors brewer to be our distiller because he had the basic knowledge. He only have to have. So we went in. He went into a couple of trainings. Then he was Greg Matisse, who came over from MGP. He actually went through and told him all the process. So middle of July, this guy thought about it that I cannot work into the small distillation world because I come from Coors and I need everything organized. And small businesses are not. Small businesses are like, okay, when you open the door, you have to do this, you have to do that, you have to do this, you have to do everything, right?
All hands on deck.
All hands on deck. And this guy was, I think it was 10th or 12th July. He said, I cannot do it. And, I quit. Okay. So I was sitting over, discussed with my family, my brother, my brother was there, my father was there, and we all were sitting there and said, and I told them, I said, you know what, no matter what happened, I'm going to put the stills on 1st of August. If what happened, it would be, I'll just blow up the whole place. That will be the maximum it will happen. Because It didn't. I'm still alive. Yeah. So it's still working. So
was it you that did it, or
yes,
it was me. The first one to turn the still on?
I was the first one to turn the still on, because I had a little practical knowledge by when the distiller came in and he was showing how everything do it. But I was like very hands on. I was available there. So 1st of August.
Well, you buried the lead, by the way, because that's a hell of a story. That you just went and turned it on.
I just turned it on. My major fear was boiler. The first couple of weeks when I went in there, I was scared that I was in an impression this will blow up.
Yeah.
Because we have a very big boiler. We have a 15 psi boiler. It is not a small joke. It is by almost 200 square feet of a boiler in that room.
So the big, not to jump ahead, right? But the big question I would have is, so you've had some stuff now that you've distilled, and you have some stuff that now your next distiller that came in has distilled.
Micah Reynolds will be very happy to know that I am telling on the podcast that his stuff is better than mine.
But have you tried,
yes.
Is it going to be a limited edition?
So what will I call it? Filibuster's first batch sucked.
No.
So,
It's like what was it that the Wild Turkey had?
how can you do mistakes?
Oh, there's no mistake. I mean, it's whiskey. It's good.
It's good. I love Wild. I honestly.
No, Forgiven. Wild Turkey Forgiven. Where they had you don't remember?
They had, I think so. It was
I've heard of the release.
bourbon and rye mash bill. Something got mixed up or
Yeah.
something got.
There was a mistake at the distillery.
They were supposed to distill bourbon instead of rye. The way distilled something happened, but it's good.
It's good.
Wild Turkey's all stuff is good. So to complete that story, so I pulled up some 6 months old sample just for that. So when I distilled it, friends and family came over. We all tried it, and everybody just thought that I was given this thumbs up and pat on the back that you did the best whiskey ever made in this world. And I was so impressed and so confident that, like,
You're like, don't hire anybody. I can.
can't do it. But it was just like I had to come back to the sales. We, as a company, as I told you, we are 100% family owned. There is not a dollar a dime still taken from an investor or from any third party. So we wanted to keep that thing going on, as we are a very traditionally backwards immigrants. So we want to keep everything as much as we can have a control. So finally, I distilled it. They all like it. White whiskey. All the parameters which was told to me that it should have this. It seems to be, I have covered all those parameters. So I put everything into the barrels and pulled up samples in about 6 months. When I pulled up the samples in 6 months, it tasted very good. I was very, very happy because I've tasted some very good stuff, some little good stuff, and some not very good stuff. So I thought it was a little over par. I mean, if it's not the best stuff, it's not the worst. I was happy with that. So when Micah Reynolds, who's my production manager and our distiller over there, when he distilled his stuff and his 6 months old compared to my stuff, mine sucked. Mine sucked very bad because his was all done in there are only 4 controls in the still. You know, like there is only 2 for your upper vapors, from lower vapors, 1 is mid vapors. So there is only like 4 controls. I mean, I was the one who really did a bad job.
I think with one control, you can have the same outcome.
I think so. I didn't know about the one control. That's why. So when he had his 6 months, we tried both together, and the normal consensus was nobody wanted to tell me on my face that this is Sid, yours is not that good. They said, well, this is okay, but this is better.
So are you gonna I would think that somewhere you need to save some of that, right? So that you always have it, stuff you back.
It was distilled. So some of the batches were distilled on my daughter's birthday. So there was the barrels there were 6 barrels which were laid on my daughter's birthday, 6 or 9, something like that. So which I'm going to hold for her and drink when she is legitimate to drink it, when she turns 21. Is it 21? Yeah.
21. One of my favorite things is Heaven Hill has something on their tour, and it's called Bad Bourbon. It's a 24-year-old bourbon that smells amazing, and then you taste it, it's not good. So I hope that when your daughter is of age, that may it be a good tasting bourbon, and may she enjoy it.
It's a decent bourbon. I mean, the reason why it is not.
You're not selling it right now, and you're a salesman.
It's not a very bad whiskey. I mean, the parameters. See, you know what? To make a good whiskey or a bad whiskey, it all starts from ingredients. What ingredients you use. So we are contracted with a local farmer. Every drop of grain we buy local. Also, if you go onto our website,
it's all Virginia, right?
It's 100% Virginia. We clearly mention it's not, no hanky panky stuff, that we all say, oh, we buy from a local farmer, but nobody knows where the local farmer is. Local farmer can be in Kentucky because,
he's local to somewhere.
He's local, but we don't like, we are very, when we do things, we'll do it right. We were very open when we source it, we said we are sourcing, but now we are not sourcing, and we are very open to it that, okay, we do not source any more whiskey, and we have stopped sourcing it. So we bought all the grains from a local farmer. The content of that grain is very good. It's grown in Shenandoah. If you look, Shenandoah was known as a breadbasket of the world at one point of time. I don't know whether it's still not there or not. It's just because of a higher mineral, the limestone quality to it.
Well, and I'll just say, you guys, in going to the website, you guys are pretty transparent with everything from your mash bill to, the aging to the finishes that you put on it, and everything that you just said about who you're working with. I do, in this day and age where marketing is key, I think there's something to be said about being authentic and then being very transparent and saying, there's something that Zeke always makes fun of me for, is there's Roaming Man out of Sugarland Distillery in East Tennessee, and they give you the whole gas profile. They give you a little sheet and it shows where in the distilling process all the gases are going, and I can't understand the dang thing, but Zeke, I'm just like,
they tell us. Stare at it. He's enamored. He's like, look at how amazing this is.
Look at how much they're telling us.
And then, I do have somewhat of a mildly chemical background from undergrad and early farm, but it's like, okay, John, well, what does this mean? Because I'm looking at it and I don't understand a bit of this.
And I
don't
you're
know,
supposed to tell me.
It's amazing, isn't it? And I'm like, but what's it saying to be amazing? Look at it. It's amazing.
See, that's what happens. You just tell them. What is it? Whether you understand or not, it doesn't matter. Somebody's telling you.
We had a similar conversation earlier before you got here. The renters left these hot fries. And I eat a fair amount of hot fries, I'll admit it. These tasted pretty novel to me. I'm like, John, you got to try these. They just don't taste like hot fries to me, though. They say they're hot fries. He tries them. Yeah, okay. I'm like, have you ever heard of this? Is this local or not? And the bag says Andy Caps. He's like, Andy Caps. Yeah, I don't think they just sell those in the normal spots. Usually at gas stations. Well, what normal spots are you sourcing out hot fries, buddy?
The grocery store.
Hot fries.
Hot fries?
You've never got...
John, that's a gas station thing, man.
I think so. It's a gas station.
I got a pretty good laugh. And he's like, no, you don't find them at the normal spots. Those are the ones you find at gas stations usually. Clearly, we got to work on your game here, John.
I have no game.
Your hot fry game is slacking right now.
You would think as a fat guy, I would be all over the hot fry game, but I'm not.
If anyone knows where Andy Caps is out of, or if it's local to a certain area, please let us know.
Please let us know.
We're intrigued now.
But let's bring it back to Filibuster here, because there's two mash bills, right? So you have the 60% corn mash bill that comes with 21% rye, and then there's a 75% corn mash bill that you guys are working with right now currently, right?
Our bourbon, what the bottles what we have and what we are trying is our bourbon is 75 corn, 21 rye, and 4% malted barley. This is a mash bill what Greg and Ray Furman from when they came in and they showed us. So we followed their pattern right away. We are working on two different other mash bills. Actually, one, sorry. For the bourbon, we are using now a little wheat in our mash bill.
Ooh.
So that is...
So are you doing like a 4 grain?
Yeah, it is 4 grain. So we're using corn, rye, wheat, barley on our bourbon. I do not have exactly a specs on exact percentage. I can give you a rough percentage, but which I don't want to. So we'll get up on that. On the rye, we are using, again, it's a 4 grain rye. We are using wheat and corn into our rye mash bill as well.
And you have great, I do just have to say, these bottles, and you guys will see a picture that we'll put on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, but these bottles are nice, tall, and skinny. So if you're thinking about cabinet
skinny
space,
and tall is always good.
if you're thinking about cabinet space, it really
I'm
allows
thinking
you to
about
fit.
something else here. Tall and skinny.
It worked for me well before I had kids.
Yeah, I was always tall.
I always want to be skinny, but just never got it. So I always feel better to see skinnies.
Yeah.
There's too much good food in the world.
Let's start talking about this though, or let's start drinking this, right? Which one do you
Let's
want to
pour
start
the
with?
first Filibuster bourbon.
Yeah, so
I like to go bourbon, rye, Boondogler, and we will go with the finish.
and then we have a special treat at the very end. So
We have a sherry cask as well, which is, I found a bottle today at one of our friends.
to rock down at Elixir Spirits.
And you can get at the sherry cask at Modern Liquors and Elixir.
Yep, the only two stores, right?
I think so. Yeah, that's the only two stores. If somebody else has it, spread the love. That's a good sherry cask done, and it was done in fresh empty barrels right off the boat. So from Hidalgo Sherry. Alrighty, so let's try.
There's bourbon here. It's
All right.
45% ABV, 90 proof. This one at the time, what it says on the barrel is that it was. What it says on the barrel is it was 70% sweet corn, 20% rye, 10% nutted barley.
Mm-hmm.
That's an interesting fact that I wanted to bring up, that it's not malted barley.
It is
it's
malted
nutted.
barley. It's a nutted malted barley. So that's just we use a little different word rather than using a malted barley. It is a malted barley.
But I think there's a little bit of a nut taste that comes through with that barley. This one, and I've been sipping on all four of these as we've been going through. The finish on this bourbon is probably the most unique out of the four that we have here. And it's it's very good, very nice.
So, as I said that, I started off my career working in a liquor store. So what my understanding of the whole project was a practical experience. You look at so when we started this project, the reason why we want to do the finishing, you look at a Scotch selection, all right? I mean, it will start from sherry, bourbon, ex-bourbon cask, new bourbon cask. There is lot happening over there. All the sherry cask, all the wine cask, all the Madeira cask. That's a lot of influences over that. Okay, fair enough. Why is that? Because barley is more neutral, and you need to impart a little bit more flavor to really get that. But bourbon, on the other hand, corn has a lot of flavor in itself. Barley you cannot eat, but corn you can eat any day. So our challenge was that, okay, I want to bring a little different character to the bourbon. So bourbon as a history, we have corn, rye, wheat, barley, mash bill, fermented it, distill it into 4 years into the barrels, wax it, non-wax it, black wax it. That's about it. That was the whole industry. If I sum it up, that's the whole industry. But so when I wanted to start off this project, I want to bring up a little different character with the bourbon. Yes, I know the wheat has that quality, rye has that quality, but why can't we extract a different kind of sweetness? So that's why we use a French oak barrels. So French oak, these comes from a limousine. From France, it's the used wine barrels. We used 100% Remy wine barrels.
Wait, you mean so they drive it in a limousine?
Yeah. It comes in a limousine.
Over the water. It's like that James Bond amphibian thing.
Yeah, and a big limousine. You can't believe it. Like it's a 40 feet container it comes in. Limousine is smaller. This is a bigger limousine.
No, but I know. It's
That's it.
I
mean, that's what we are here for. We're actually here to have fun.
Yeah.
To have drink. We're not here to do a I don't know, competition. What do I call it? I don't know.
Oh no, it's all a competition between Zeke and I. You haven't been, you say you follow the show, you actually haven't been following.
Maybe I missed something.
No, John, remember he came in, he said that you didn't have a broken palate. He didn't believe it.
Hey, how's that ETL doing? That was actually one of the questions. I put out questions for the show tonight. So I will just go on a little tangent, but and our friend Ryan Lay, this tangent is for you. He hates when we go on tangents, but we did a blind tasting because we taste most of our whiskey blind, and just no bias. So we'll know that we'll have 4. We'll taste them all blind, see which one we like the best. Zeke always hated Elmer T. Lee. We did a Buffalo Trace blind tasting. Guess what Zeke's number 1 was? Elmer T. Lee.
The one he hated?
Yeah, the one he said he hated was actually his favorite.
Still not a fan.
He says that.
It's a personal palate. I think so. All the bourbons
and
are...
Zeke's personal palate, before you go any further, Zeke's personal palate is biased towards Elmer T. Lee. Just so you know. But continue with the bourbon. Now that we've got it out there how much Zeke likes Elmer T. Lee, let's talk more about your bourbon.
So this one, it's a 75 corn, 21 rye, 4% malted barley, and then it gets finished into a wine barrels. It's a combination of red and white. It's a 60% red wine, 40% white wine. We leave it about close to 60 days in a wine barrels. That is enough to extract that sweetness out of the wine barrels, and that just gets the roundedness. Because bourbon itself has a lot of flavors from the charred. It stays 4 years into a charred oak barrels, and we use a combination of 3 and 4 number charred. We also use air dried and kiln dried barrels.
Zeke has an air freshener that just sprayed in here.
It works on its own.
Yeah, kind of tooted. Some mist came out of it. Just.
We thought we got a couple of friends who came to drink.
Tooty would be the right word. That's Bush League in the South.
Well, so what do you get on this bourbon? What are your notes?
I thought the nose was very sweet. I got French toasty, maybe like a golden graham somewhere in there. But honestly, just a really sweet, enjoyable nose, to say the least. Palate, first hit, it was really thin. Almost got like an apple tart, I thought. And then it seemed to me somewhat cognac-y, which I think would be from the finishes. But that range was interesting. The only thing I thought missing was a thickness,
the depth.
Just the large, like heavy feeling on the palate where you can just chew and really work into some flavors over time.
And I think that, I mean, just being honest, right? These offerings are all going to be 90 proof. So when we really dig in, and we did have that sherry that we had was a cask strength, and I think there's a difference in the finish on the 90 proof. It's a little bit shorter, doesn't linger as much, doesn't chew as much as that sherry that was 100 and what was it? I have it written down. It was 117.47 proof. So there, I think you get that difference there in the proof on what lingers. Not saying a 90 proofer can't linger, but I think there's a longer linger in that cask strength sherry. But I would say, to what Zeke was saying, the finishes, it's such a unique aspect to it when it's done well. And we were talking about that before we started recording, that when you have a good finish, and when it adds and complements the whiskey rather than kind of falling off and taking away from the whiskey, I think that means the world.
The whole idea of a craft industry should be to bring a different character, because it defeats the purpose of being a craft if you are not following your passion and you're not doing something different. Let's go 10 years ago. Who would have think that IPA is the biggest category in the beer now? Who would think that, okay, beer was always like a drinking of Pilsner, Bud Light, Miller Light. That was the whole thing. But if somebody comes up with a hoppy IPA, I said, what is this? And I don't know the stats at this point in time, but I would say the IPA would be the number one seller or close to that.
The whole beer industry, period.
Still Budweiser.
Well, I mean, it amazes me. Like, sure, bourbon, rye, whiskey, whatever, followers. We have things we chase and things we probably spend more money on than we should. But at the same time, the folks that really get in and dive into beer, I mean, the lines for those are exponentially more than almost any bourbon release. And I don't know, I guess to me, I always get hung up is it's a beer. You have to drink it right then.
Yeah, but
we
bourbon...
can save this bottle and drink it 3 years from now.
See, this is a whole evolution in the industry. It all started from 70s, 80s, where a lot of new wineries came into existence. When the really California came up and stood up to the competition of the world. And then now beers are the one. So we're hoping that one day people will, especially people who are always behind one product. I somehow not in a favor of that. Give a chance to smaller distilleries, smaller craft distilleries. Why are you just running behind that 4 names? And because it's just a name. Half of you or half would have not even tried it, and they said, and they just run over that 4 or 5 different brands. Give it a chance to the smaller craft distilleries. Yes, I think so. Our craft industry would also have to come collectively and come up with a steady pricing. Some of the craft industries are very expensive.
Because most of your stuff is under $50, right?
Yeah, my whole idea of is I will get one opportunity in my life to convince a customer to buy this product. If I am not able to do that, I have lost that customer. And if I lost one customer, I'm not losing one customer, I'm losing 16 customers. Because one bottle gets 16 shots and maybe he's sharing up with his 16 friends. So I try to be, I'm actually working on, my whole distillery is worked on such a nice parameter where I will keep dropping the price because as my production increases, and today I'm doing 7 days of production with 3 barrels every day. I have same overheads, I have same everything. So I'm trying to work a nice parameters. My distillery was set up by an ex-Jim Beam production manager. He is the one who set it up few things like putting an agitator on each fermenter. What difference does it make? It has made a 3 or 4 gallons in each batch. Is it a big amount? Yes. If you calculate 3 gallons on every batch,
it's a few more bottles every batch.
Yeah, 3 gallons is roughly 7 bottles?
Yeah.
Roughly, I think so. I didn't go to school, so I can't tell you the math.
No, you know how to enter it in a computer.
Yeah, I will do it. A program can analyze it.
You can make an algorithm.
Wish I would have been that brainy.
But yeah, better margins, no matter where they are, it's still a margin.
Yeah,
and
that I can
better
understand.
Is always good.
See, that's why that I can understand. Where is the better margins?
Well, let's
trim the fat.
Let's go through this a little bit more. I don't want us to be rushed on this. The rye is the one you wanted us to go to next, right?
Yeah. Are we done with the bourbon? I think so. Did you give your reviews?
Yeah. We both were saying, I was talking more about the finish, how sweet it was. I think the finish really comes through. We were talking about tasting notes. Did we get through all of them, Zeke? Hell, I don't know. We got through enough to say we liked it. Yeah. And I think the finish was more unique from most bourbons I would have. I could really taste those.
No, I just tasted it again.
Wines.
It's to me somewhere between apple, cognac, and some barley resonate as well. But I get those 3 as a profile in a pretty good unison.
When you get a little bit of an apple and the tropical, basically what you're getting is a malolactation because we use a Chardonnay barrels to finish it. It's a used Chardonnay barrels. So the malolactation is sometimes really stands out. You get more tropical apple, peach kind of it. That's the uniqueness of this bourbon. That you try every bourbon, what you get is a lot of cherry. That's vanilla. That's the two characters we all are bought and for it. But the unique character what you get with this bourbon is the tropical flavors of it. That is from a white wine barrels. So that is something existent. That is something like you really feel this is a difference. So when you're doing a blind tasting, maybe because if there is a 20 bourbon aficionados sitting and drinking, they think it's different. So probably they'll say, I don't know what is it. Yeah. So do I give them everything or do I say it's bad? So that's what I would request everybody who drinks any craft product. Be open. Do not give suggestions for being on that. Just be open and try what is it. Just give your feedback in this is different. That's what the craft industry, we all should survive and to do it. We all should look after to do this.
And I think that's the same thing with the rye. I mean, you can taste the finishes on everything. I mean, there are characteristics of the rye, and I'm kind of going more at a high level here because I think the tasting notes here are not as granular for me as they typically would get. I could really sit there and try to pick out every aspect of it. For me, this is more about the experience with the finishes. And that's at least what I'm getting, right? Is that it's not the typical rye I would taste where it's going to tingle my tongue. It's going to, there are aspects when I have a rye that I go, that is a rye. I think this finish is a heck of a lot smoother of a rye than I would normally get. And there's almost that fruity, finishy component to it that you were discussing. Is I almost get I just get notes in here that I typically would not get from a rye, in the sense of those aspects of the finish in there. I get. It's hard to explain exactly what it is. Besides, unless I were to really sit down and analyze the pour and have about a half an hour to sit there and enjoy it and sip it and nose it and go back and forth and do all that. But it's like fruit. It's a fruity rye that I think it would be really good in the summer. That's something that Zeke and I talk about, is what type of, what time of the year would you really enjoy something? And I think rye for us is something we think there are winter ryes and summer ryes, just like there's kind of winter bourbon and summer bourbon. This is something I could sit out on the deck at night and just really enjoy and really get behind.
Yeah. The best way of this rye is also that a little drop of water or a rock, it keeps on opening. This is like a mystery thing. So like terroirs to winery, its barrels are to whiskeys. So when you put into different barrels, it just extracts a lot of different flavors. It's a character.
Zeke, what do you get on this one?
Nose wise, it moved some. I kind of went from an initial honey cinnamonish with some heat, almost. I wrote down boozy apple pie. I don't know, I kind of went there for a moment. Palate wise, that one hasn't ranged as much as the nose did going back to it. It's just a very consistent balance of spice, secondary to barley. Almost with the barley, it kind of leads into some kind of graham crackery-ish. And when I say secondary, I guess I mean it's about some kind of ratio, like 70-30, 65-35, spices up front, and then that mellows in to the barley flavor that comes out of it. Finish was almost on the exact same wavelength, I guess, so to speak. But the barley hung around, not the rye, which I know you're a big Kentucky hug guy when you get into your rye. So
not on the rye, it's more on a cask strength, because that Those fries tingle my tongue.
Either way, I know you like the
All right, John and Zeke.
the hug.
Also, one on the what's your 5 favorite ryes?
Oh, that's that.
5?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Half of them would be MGP.
Nothing wrong, Aaron. They do a good job.
So, actually, I think my favorite rye is a craft rye. And I'll be completely honest. It's H. Clark out of Thompson Station in Tennessee. So it's a local craft guy here. He does a barrel a week. So right up your alley, you like this guy. It's almost a peanut brittle rye. And he leans towards brewing first and foremost. So it's very much a malted rye. So it has that malted characteristics, and you get that malted peanut brittle rye that's really, really good. I like Kentucky Owl. I like 13th Colony rye out of Georgia. MGP rye, right? So the Whistle Pig stuff. Anytime you find Whistle Pig that's out of Indiana, that stuff is really, really good. That's 4. And then, I mean, definitely like your rye. I'm not saying that because you're here. But Pikesville. And then, the Michter's Barrel Strength rye has kind of been one of...
Isn't it MGP?
Yeah.
No, we generally say, as far as a... maybe not a gold standard, but our litmus test rye for most ryes would be Michter's Barrel Strength. Honestly, just as far as consistency across the board and the dots it hits... It's by no means the best rye, but for the price, findability, if someone was going to set up a blind of ryes, I would say put that in it. You know, even if you don't like it, when you have it alone, I would like to see where it fares. Personally, I really love the rye that Willett's putting out right now. Their 4-year small batches are very, very interesting and good. We've had them in blinds, and they fared well against stuff that was twice as old. The only other interesting rye I can think of I've had was the one from Canada, Lot 40.
Oh yeah, that one was really good.
It's 11. I think it's a 12 years.
I enjoy that rye.
But they have one that they put out. They didn't put it in the States. It was Canada only. 12 years. 110 or 115 proof.
That was that big that came out from that distillery, the Canada.
It's not MGP. It's something in Canada.
No, there's a big big distillery in Canada that's produced rye as well. I'll come back.
I can't believe we didn't mention that the Hochstadlers, the vatted rye and the 16-year rye are really, really good. Mm-hmm. That vatted rye for $40, that's a mix of 4 to 15-year whiskey, is really, really... I know I'm giving you more than 5 now, but...
That's fair.
There's... that 16-year is great, but it's a $200 bottle. We did it blind against all the lock, stock, and barrel. So we did the 13, 16, 18-year stock and barrel. We did the Hochstadler 16 barrel strength with the vatted. The 16-year was my favorite, but that vatted rye for $40 is so good. That came in second for me strong.
Well, on rye, I mean, it's a tough question. I'm sure folks have probably heard it before, but like the simple analogy I prefer for that is if you're looking at the highway and you ask somebody's preference for bourbon, it's probably in between the 2 yellow lines. You ask somebody their preference for rye, you're going to get the white lines. Maybe some shoulder or feeder streets off the other half, but
you're hitting that bump strip on the side of the highway.
It just varies so much, and it's the grains and other factors. But it really is a day and night difference to say, do you think this is good bourbon? You'll get a much more level consensus, but a room of 20 people, you could have 3 ryes that were day and night difference.
Sure, yeah, that's the whole.
Which one did you vote for? And you'll get 7 hands for each.
Yeah, that's the whole kind of different kinds of rye.
But that's the fun with rye, really.
Yeah.
So let's move on here because there's a Boondogler, which I love the name of this one. There's a Boondogler whiskey. It's aged in 5 different barrels. It's still 90 proof, 45% ABV. This one was, it's, for me, the best way I could sum this up is sweet and smooth.
I would put it one more, sweet and spicy. It's a toffee character. So when you are drinking this, this is a treasure mystery. So it starts off with the bourbon because it's a blend of bourbon and a rye. It's a combined mash bill. It's 45 corn, 45 rye, and 10% malted barley. Because that's what our mash bills are. This is as close as mash bill I can tell you. Then we also use. This is whiskey. This is not bourbon. So that's why it goes into a used bourbon barrels and goes into used French oak barrels. So what we'll do is we will use, if we are doing a 5-barrel batch, it will be a 1 American oak new, 1 used bourbon barrels, 2 French oak, 1 would be a new French oak, and 1 would be a wine used, and 1 is a sherry cask. So
then you combine them all together.
Then we all combine it together. So there's a lot of work which goes into making this Boondogler. If you go back to the history books where you look at it, the original Manhattan used to be called for 50-50, 50 bourbon, 50 rye to make a perfect Manhattan. That's what this does. This brings up that it makes a great Manhattan or old fashioned. I mean, if you look at the cocktail world, is that character what you get? You want that spice, the sweet, because you put a little bit of vermouth, you put a little bitters. You want a product which holds up all these ingredients and bind up together and put it in a glass. It becomes a combination. When you put it out, it is just like a bouquet of everything into a glass. That's how I look at my cocktail. I don't look at my cocktail, which is whiskey going one way, vermouths, all the ingredients are going other way. So I want everything to gel up. It's beautiful in the glass. It just becomes like a beautiful bouquet.
What do you think about this one, Zeke?
It's so it's interesting hearing that because throughout my notes I kind of had a back and forth theme, so to speak. All I knew was the 5-barrel finish, not necessarily what the barrels were or anything beyond that. Nose wise, I thought it had a strong mint or fresh wood characteristic to it, slightly astringent. Again, some of that heat that I think was referenced. And then as I factored in the aspects of finishing, I thought that the nose seemed much more white wine over red, in that just kind of the warmth, dryness, and a little bit of heat that came off. Palate wise, it seemed young at first. There was a tad of noticeable corn. Then it was strangely just viscous. I think it's the only thing we had that really thickened up on the palate well. And I had this first thing out of the gate too, so I enjoyed even looking back at it, the viscosity that was there as opposed to some of the other ones. By the end of it, I thought this seemed more red wine than white. I think the thickness had a lot to do with that. And then even more as far as the back and forth battle. Finish wise, it had back to a white wine warmth, but then I guess the lingering viscosity led me to think of the depth of a more of a red barrel something. And then a little corn came in on the back end for some sweetness that it wasn't unpleasant.
And for you to actually like corn, that's a big deal.
Like I say, it was. This was not necessarily a hot mess way, but clearly I went.
It was a cornucopia of flavor.
I went back and forth on what I thought was predominant over in all 3 aspects.
And I think that's something that we can appreciate, right? And I this was probably one of my favorites out of what we've tried so far. Last but not least being, and I just want to make sure we say this, our friend Tarak down at Spring Hill at Elixir Spirits. He actually has a pick. He has a Filibuster pick right now. It is finished in ex-Grenache, 80%, and 20% in Chardonnay barrels. It's a straight bourbon, aged 4 to 6 years, 90 proof, 45% ABV. In drinking this one, it's the darkest out of the 4 that we're sitting here having. You really, for me, I really taste that fruitiness of the wine. It's probably the most predominant. And, just knowing that we have a lot to drink and knowing that we don't have a lot of time, Zeke, I've been letting you give the more detailed notes, and I've kind of been giving a high-level experience overview. But this was a lot of just fruity wine for me. I got a lot of fruit on it. Just was an enjoyable finish, but it was a dark fruit. It wasn't a light fruit. It was, those cherry notes, those wine notes. I got more. If I was going back to your last comment about the Boondogler, I get more of a red wine on this than I get a white wine.
Well, to be brief on this, and the fact there's some French oak involved, and the World Cup just finished as well.
And France won, actually.
Viva la France! I don't know, the nose, everything about this nose and front end of the palate, it just screams French oak to me, which, not to knock American oak since we live here, but there is a drastic difference in certain products to me. When you smell and get that French oak, you just know, like, that's a different type of wood.
America.
Hey.
On that note, all we can really say is, we could sit here and talk to you for hours. You've been a plethora of information, and we would love to have you come back again if you're in Nashville. So if we could get your commitment now, there's so much more we could talk about, so many other aspects of the business side that we always like to get into. I think the best way to sum it up, though, is that I think the Filibuster brand, it's not going to be your typical whiskey in the sense of, if you think you're going to have a straight bourbon and just get that bourbon taste, that's not what someone coming to your brand would be looking for. But if you like that, if you like something that's new, exciting, kind of pushing the envelope on what you can do instead of just sitting there, anybody can go get a barrel bourbon, just let it sit, but you guys are doing interesting things with them and taking that time to try to give us a different experience at a good price point, regardless of which one of these 4 we like the best. We didn't rank them. We'll do that another time. It's something that I think people would really get a kick out of, and we always think about I think about conversation starters. So what's a whiskey that you could sit around with 4 of your friends at a table and have a whiskey night and have a conversation about and say, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? And I think this definitely belongs at a lot of tables, at a lot of whiskey nights, to have that conversation about what whiskey can do and where whiskey can go.
Yeah, that's the whole point. As I said, I wanted to come up and give you an experience, or this is what I would like to give a customer, an experience. This is all about experience. Drinking a whiskey with the friends is like a greatest gift you can have.
Well, we thank you for the experience. Zeke, do you have anything you want to close out on?
One more thing, as you said before, I come to the Nashville. I would like you guys to invite to our distillery, and why don't you come at our distillery, and we can actually do a big feature on production. We will happy to share on a YouTube. On one of your podcasts, and do a real 2 hours production process, to show them. If you
can hold that to Zeke's having another kid in September.
Oh wow, you in a rush.
We can't do anything now until a few months after.
We don't get much travel leeway.
Okay,
but if you can understand that. And we have each other's number. So we will hold that thought. We are game. We just have to wait for a time where both of us can get.
Zeke can get the dad duties out.
Yeah.
And worst case scenario, I'll go without Zeke.
Well, I will tee a couple things back up in there if you want to lube it back in somehow.
Yeah, no, I mean, good luck, Zeke. Hopefully.
On that note, thank you all for listening.
Well, no, I put this in, however, but I think something we didn't touch on and I had written down, and that's why I want to make sure I bring it up, was only averaging a 60 days of finishing, I think, is a point that really helps these out, and it gives enough flavor to accentuate it but not be overbearing. John and I both had plenty of other finished products that set for months, not days. And we talked about it earlier offline, especially as the proof diminishes and the longer the time it sits in that other barrel, it just gets so overwhelming and honestly not even enjoyable. There's at least been one or two John and I, splurged on, quote unquote, and
it's been disappointing.
We couldn't even finish the dram. I mean, it was bad. But I think the length of time yields something to where it imparts enough flavor to give a balance or a complexity, but you're not overwhelmed by finished in white wine, red wine, whatever it was. That's not the dominant flavor that just resonates throughout, which, at least for me, I find that more times than not. And that's why at this point, most things that say finish, I'm like, whoa. Somebody's got to pour this for me first, or I'm not going to buy it.
Yeah, that's the whole. I think so. We had enough of time. So on a closing notes, I would like to thank you guys for having us, for having me. More importantly, this product, enjoy with friends, family, because this is a true craft, a family product put in together. It's father and son's team who has worked hard to come up to this point and do it with the support of a family. All my family. You guys
were in 18 states, and now you're going to be
21. We're in 21 states, and hoping to get into a couple of new states by end of this year.
So your hard work is paying off. And for those of us out there that like to support local family business, for 21 states it's now local.
Yeah, and the only way we work hard is just have to buy shoes every 3 months.
Hey, if you're anywhere below the Mason-Dixon line, etc., right now, and it's too hot for bourbon, which is the case I'm in most days, I will say their gin, I've actually probably drank more of than anything else on this table. It's going to look a little cloudy when you see it in the bottle, but it's because it's finished in American oak.
Yeah, we didn't touch about gin at all.
It just gives everybody a little teaser for what you're going to come back for. No, where else can the folks find you, by the way?
You can actually find us. The best way is go to our website, filibusterbourbon.com, and somebody who wants to buy online can go to modernliquors.com. They ship almost everywhere except few states which are control states, and support your local liquor stores. That would be my far and most important. In Nashville, I have a list of it which I can give it to you, or you can find it on our retail stores. Some of the...
it's Elixir, Carruthers. I know I've seen it at Midtown Wine and Spirits. I know I've seen it at Frugal McDougal. There's a good number of places in the area. I believe I've seen it at Main Street Wine and Liquors.
Vintage Wines, Radnor Wine and Spirits, Red Spirits and Wine.
Yep.
So these all have a barrel pick as well. This is all, I don't have the details on what finishes they all have, but they pretty much have the finishes. Support your liquor store, local stores, because It's a lot of hard work which these guys put in. They take risk with us. So please go enjoy and give your reviews. If it's bad, that would be the most important. Give us your feedback, what you didn't like it, so that we can go back to the drawing book, work hard, and get that corrected. That would be the most important factor for me, rather than good thumbs up can everybody give it, but give us your negative feedbacks and what bad it is so we can correct that.
Well, thank you so much for coming in, Zeke. The folks can find us on Twitter at Bourbon Dads, find us on Facebook at Dad's Drinking Bourbon, find us on Instagram at Dad's Drinking Bourbon. You can find our podcast on your favorite podcast provider, Apple, Google Play, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Podknife, whatever you're trying to find, all those other podcast aggregators. You can find us on there. Please leave us a 5-star review. Tell us why you like us. It really helps when people are trying to find a new podcast. Zeke, where else can the folks find us?
Well, they can still find us on Instagram. Like you mentioned, we have the question feature now, so fire anything off. And
that's only if we post a question.
Oh, sorry. I'm not technically savvy.
So
in that case, you can always find us in Nashville, Tennessee. Always happy to share pours. Just give us a little bit of notice. We can try and arrange our home schedules.
Jesus, Zeke, my kid's going to get up at 4 hours. Get to the point.
That's your fault, not mine.
Oh.
Mine sleeps like a beast. I read better stories.
All right. Y'all have a good night. Cheers.
Good night. Cheers.
Ciao.